The text came in at 9:14 p.m. No warning, no argument. Just one sentence that erased years. "We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." I read it 3 times, waiting for the follow-up. The explanation. The part where someone said this is temporary. It never came. My entire family had decided, together apparently, that I was the problem, and they wanted me gone quietly. So I did the one thing they didn't expect. I stopped contacting them, but I didn't disappear. And within weeks, they were the ones blowing up my phone, asking why everything in their lives had started falling apart. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have something to say, but because I was trying to understand how a family conversation turns into a group decision without you in the room. There was no argument leading up to it, no fight, no dramatic fallout, just distance, delivered by text. My name is Natalie Brooks. I was 33, a compliance analyst, single, financially stable, and, until that message, still operating under the assumption that family meant permanence, even when it was complicated. I'd always been the one who checked in, the one who smoothed things over, the one who kept conversations going when everyone else went quiet. Apparently, that had been rebranded as the problem. The message wasn't signed, no name, no explanation, just we. That word did more damage than anything else, because we meant consensus. It meant agreement. It meant this wasn't impulsive. Someone had drafted that text, someone else had approved it, and everyone had decided I didn't need to be part of the discussion. I sat on my couch for a long time after that, phone face down beside me, replaying every recent interaction, looking for the offense that justified being erased. I couldn't find one. So instead of asking for clarity, instead of apologizing for something unnamed, I took the message at face value. I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped showing up in quiet ways they'd never noticed until they were gone. I removed myself completely. And that's when things started breaking. Because what my family didn't realize was this: distance works both ways. And the moment I honored their request, they lost access to more than just me. The first few days were quiet, not peaceful, just empty. I woke up to mornings without, "Did you see this?" texts, no family group chat notifications, no passive updates about things I was apparently expected to care about but not be consulted on. I told myself this was what they wanted, distance, so I respected it. I removed my parents as emergency contacts, updated my work paperwork, changed the beneficiary on an account I'd set up years earlier, just in case. These weren't dramatic gestures. They were administrative, the kind of things you only notice when someone isn't there anymore. That's when the silence stopped feeling mutual. The first call came a week later, from my aunt. "Hey," she said carefully, like she was walking into a room she didn't understand. "Your mom says you've gone no contact. Is everything okay?" I stared at the ceiling. "I'm doing exactly what they asked," I said. A pause. "They didn't mean it like that." "Then why did they say it like that?" She didn't answer. By the second week, the ripple spread. A cousin messaged asking if I was still handling something for my parents. My brother emailed about a document he couldn't find. Someone else asked if I'd changed my number. I hadn't. I'd just stopped filling the gaps. Because over time, I'd quietly become the person who made things work without being asked. Paperwork, deadlines, logistics. The unglamorous stuff that kept everyone else comfortable. Distance, it turned out, came with consequences. My parents didn't reach out directly at first. They watched. They waited. They assumed I'd get uncomfortable in the quiet and return to my role. But the longer I stayed silent, the more problems surfaced. Small at first, then louder. Late notices, missed appointments, confusion about things I'd always handled automatically. And still, I said nothing, because the request hadn't been vague. Please stop contacting us completely. So I did. The first message from my mother arrived 17 days after the text. It wasn't an apology, it was a question. Have you seen the mail? I read it once. Then I set my phone down and went back to what I was doing, because something had become very clear. They hadn't asked for distance because they didn't need me. They'd asked for distance because they thought they could control the terms of it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't negotiating. By the third week, the tone changed. The messages weren't about concern anymore. They were about problems. My brother emailed asking if I'd moved a shared document. My aunt wanted to know why a payment hadn't gone through. A cousin asked if I'd updated my parents' insurance portal recently. I answered none of it, not out of spite, but because I finally saw the pattern. They didn't know how things worked. They only knew that I made them work. For years, I'd been the quiet infrastructure of the family, the person who remembered deadlines, translated letters, filled out forms, smoothed over mistakes before they turned into emergencies. Distance hadn't just removed me from conversations. It had removed the glue. My parents finally called at the end of the third week. Not together, not united. My dad first. "Hey," he said carefully, like we were catching up instead of standing on opposite sides of a line they'd drawn. "We need to talk." "I thought you needed distance," I replied. A pause. "This is different." "How?" He sighed. "We didn't realize how much you were involved." That word again. Involved. "I was respecting your request," I said. "You asked me to stop contacting you completely." "That wasn't meant to include everything," he said quickly. I almost laughed. "You didn't specify exceptions," I replied, "so I assumed you meant it." Silence. Then, quieter, "Your mom is stressed." I looked around my apartment. The calm, the order, the space where nothing depended on me without permission. "I'm not responsible for managing her stress anymore." He didn't argue, because for the first time there was nothing left to argue with. The call from my mother came later that night. Her voice was sharper, controlled. "You're being cruel." "I'm being consistent," I said. "You know this isn't what we meant." "Then you shouldn't have said it." She exhaled hard. "We just needed space from the drama." "There was no drama," I replied. "There was just me." That landed, because the truth they'd been circling was finally unavoidable. They hadn't asked for distance from chaos. They'd asked for distance from accountability. And now that the distance was real, the weight of everything I'd been holding quietly had nowhere to go. The final message came the next morning, from the same group chat that had gone silent weeks earlier. "Can we reset? This has gone too far." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I locked my phone, because resets only work when the system was fair to begin with. And this one never was. I didn't respond to the group chat, not right away, not later. I left it exactly where it was, unanswered, because something had shifted during those weeks of silence. Not anger, not grief, certainty. They had asked for distance as a way to regain control. As a reset button, they assumed I'd press once the discomfort became inconvenient enough. What they didn't anticipate was that distance could be peaceful. The calls slowed after that, not because everything was fixed, but because there was nothing left to extract. No reminders coming from me. No forms magically completed. No quiet rescues happening behind the scenes. They started dealing with the consequences of their own systems. And I stopped absorbing the fallout. A month later, my dad sent one last message. "We miss you. This isn't how family should be." I read it carefully. Then I replied with the only honest answer I had. "I respected what you asked for. I'm still doing that." He didn't respond, because there was no argument left to make. Life didn't become perfect after that, but it became lighter. I stopped bracing for contact that only arrived when something was wrong. I stopped explaining myself to people who needed me functional, not present. I stopped shrinking to maintain access. Distance, it turned out, wasn't punishment. It was clarity. Sometimes I think about that first message, the one that tried to erase me politely. Please stop contacting us completely. They meant it as a threat, as leverage, as a way to make me feel small enough to comply. Instead, it became permission. Permission to step out of a role I'd never agreed to. Permission to let systems fail without intervening. Permission to choose peace over proximity. I didn't disappear. I just stopped carrying what was never mine to hold. They asked for distance, I gave it to them, exactly as requested. And for the first time, it wasn't them setting the terms. It was me deciding they didn't get to anymore.